The Diocese of Springfield, Illinois. The faith in this region was first planted by dedicated missionaries. It found an inspiring champion in the ministry of a former slave who became the nation's first black priest, and carries on today under the leadership of its current apostle, Bishop Thomas J. Paprocki.
The most important symbol for a bishop is the cathedra, or the chair. This chair is the symbol of the bishop being the primary teacher of the faith.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America. Springfield, the capital city of the great state of Illinois, is a land rich in history and culture. It's also the sea city of the Diocese of Springfield.
The region that's now the Diocese of Springfield in Illinois was first served by missionary priests who traveled the Mississippi, coming down from Canada and up from Louisiana. And they originally planned to convert the native peoples and work to plant the faith in the New World. But eventually, their work laid the foundations for the strong communities of faith that would flourish in the Mississippi Valley.
Abraham Lincoln moved to Springfield in 1837, where he spent the next 24 years as a lawyer and politician. During the Civil War, Springfield was a major center of activity. Illinois regiments trained here, the first ones under Ulysses S. Grant. The city was a political and financial center of Union support. New industries, businesses, and railroads were constructed to help support the war effort. The Catholic Church in this region was first under the jurisdiction of the Diocese of Baltimore, created in 1789. In the subsequent decades, it passed under the administration of various other dioceses.
The Diocese of Springfield, Illinois has a really interesting history because the see moved over time. It was first established in Quincy because of its connection to the Mississippi River and the ease of transportation routes. But then later on, it was recognized that they needed a more centrally located location. And so the diocese was moved first to Acton, Illinois, and then later on to Springfield. And so you have this wonderful story of sort of shifting Catholic centers of population and the bishop sort of playing a guessing game on where the church was going to flourish in the region.
One of the key players in the growth of the church in this region was the first bishop of what was then called the Diocese of Alton, Henry Damien Juncker. Born in France from a young age, he had a very deep and profound desire to become a missionary.
Originally from France, he has this great desire to come to America as a missionary. After his installation, Bishop Juncker takes about 6 months to visit different churches, missions, and priests in the diocese, almost a listening tour, if you will. And he comes away convinced that there are people leaving the church, and the reason they're leaving the church is because there weren't enough priests in the diocese. So in 1857, he goes to Europe to recruit priests and seminarians to come and serve in the Diocese of Alton. He also brings with him a group of Franciscan friars from Germany to serve not just as priests, but as educators as well. The friars become very integral to the diocese, opening up a college which is still in existence today as Quincy University.
One of the remarkable figures whose faith was nurtured in the Diocese of Springfield was Father Augustus Tolton, who was the first Black man to be ordained to the priesthood in the United States. And his life story reveals remarkable perseverance. He was born into slavery, felt called to the Catholic priesthood, and yet no seminary in the United States would accept him because of the defense of the color line. He ultimately had to go to Rome in order to study for the priesthood, and he was ordained there.
Father Tolton at first thought that he was going to be sent to Africa to serve in the missions there, but instead he became a missionary to his own people. He came back to Illinois in order to work among the African Americans in the community. And there he also suffered under tremendous racial prejudice, as many white Catholics at the time didn't accept the validity of African Americans in the priesthood. Later on, he was sent to the Diocese of Chicago in order to work among the African American Catholics there. He died at a very young age due to illness and the stress that he had experienced in trying to serve the people of God during these challenging times. In October of 1923, Pope Pius XI transfers the see city of the diocese from Alton to Springfield. James Griffin becomes the first bishop of the diocese to reside in Springfield. Griffin guides the people of Springfield through the dark days of the Depression and through World War II. He is buried in the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, the cathedral that he built and consecrated with the help of the people of Springfield.
We have three of the bishops that were here in Springfield. Bishop James Griffin, right behind the altar of sacrifice here, he was the one that built this cathedral in 1928, and we have Bishop McNicholas and Bishop O'Connor also buried here in the floor.
Dedicated in 1928, the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception has been the spiritual home and center of liturgical prayer for Springfield's Catholics for nearly a century.
The story of the growth of the Diocese of Springfield reflects how Catholics in the land of Lincoln were trying to make sense of their dual heritage as both Catholics and yet fully American. The cathedral in Springfield reveals this dual heritage. The windows that were erected in the cathedral combined the two storylines. The one side tells the story of the church in Europe. The other side tells the story of the growing faith here in the United States. And here were Catholics who entered the cathedral who could see their two storylines coming together, helping them affirm their faith as fully Catholic and fully American.
The architecture of this cathedral is based upon the architecture of another main Marian church, actually the very first church dedicated to Mary, back in 432, which is in Rome. It's St. Mary Major, a basilica. The cathedral has a coffered ceiling with ornate floweret designs that are gilded in gold with light blue and white trim. And this is very similar to the ceiling of St. Mary Major.
Well, when I'm celebrating Mass here at the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, sitting here at my cathedra, in my chair, what I see, I look out and I see these first three windows on the north wall. And so the first window, we have Jesus giving the keys to St. Peter. So that's the establishment of the church, establishment of the papacy. And so that's a very significant first window there. The second window is St. Ignatius of Antioch in the lion's den, standing there with the lions. So that's a reminder of the martyrdom that comes, if not in a physical sense, of the sacrifices that we have to make in our ministry. And then the third window is actually, I think, a very fascinating window. It is St. Leo the Great confronting Attila the Hun. So it's just a great, powerful impact of the leader of our church at that point having a moral influence on someone who was about to do them great harm. And then on the south wall, the windows are more related to North America. So you have Christopher Columbus up here, for example, and you have the Jesuit missionaries, Father Isaac Jogues and Jacques Marquette. But then we also have a very unique window, probably the only place in the world where we have stained glass windows of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. And so we have the window of President George Washington, or then probably, I think, General George Washington during the Revolutionary War, meeting with Bishop John Carroll of Baltimore. And he sends Bishop Carroll on a mission to Canada to make sure that the Canadian provinces don't ally with the British in the Revolutionary War. And then the window of Abraham Lincoln, we have him meeting with Archbishop John Hughes of New York. And President Lincoln is sending Archbishop Hughes on a diplomatic mission to France to make sure that he's trying to dissuade France from recognizing the Confederacy. And both of those missions were successful. So it's interesting that you had Washington and Lincoln using bishops as emissaries and were successful in their missions. But you also have, through these windows, you have this wonderful interplay of church and state.
Fittingly, the altarpiece of the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Springfield, Illinois, is an image of the Immaculate Conception. It's based on a famous 17th century painting by Spanish artist Bartolomé Murillo of Mary under her title, Immaculate Conception.
If you were to come and walk around the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, you would be struck by the beauty of this. It was totally renovated in 2009. You would be struck by this beautiful mosaic of the Immaculate Conception with the Latin inscription, Macula non est in te. Macula means stain, or is the stain of sin. Immacula, no stain, so there is no stain in you, the Blessed Mother. So that's the symbol of the Immaculate Conception. And then, of course, the most important symbol for a bishop is the cathedra, or the chair. And when I meet with the confirmation candidates, I always try to explain the symbolism of the chair. And I think the symbolism of the cathedra, or chair, is a couple of things. One is, I talk about it being the symbol of governance. So like a king sits on a throne, God sits on his throne. It's not exactly the bishop's throne, but it is like Springfield is the seat of governance of our state. So the seat of the bishop is the symbol of his governing the diocese. More importantly, I think, is the symbol of being the teacher. So the chair goes back to the universities in the Middle Ages. You know, even today we talk about a university professor holds the chair of economics, or the chair of agricultural studies, chair of English literature.
The cathedra, or chair, inside the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception represents Bishop Paprocki's authority as the Apostle of Springfield.
Well, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I'm the third of 9 children. The oldest is a girl and the youngest is a girl, and there are 7 boys in between. My great-grandparents came from Poland in the 1890s and settled in the Chicago area. And both of my parents were in the same parish, actually, St. Casimir Parish. In our home parish, St. Casimir, we had 4 priests in the parish, and they were all wonderful priests. So I would say that, you know, the influence of my own vocation was the fact that I just grew up knowing a lot of good priests. My mother says I was about 4 years old when I started talking about wanting to be a priest. And that's true. As long as I can remember, I wanted to be a priest. I used to play Mass with my family members. My mother made a whole Mass set for me of vestments and used to use a little golden cup as a chalice and oyster crackers for hosts. And the kids from the neighborhood would come over. I took up a collection. We used Monopoly money, so I wasn't taking any real money. And I even had a name for the parish. It was Sacred Heart Parish. So the Sacred Heart has been a big part of my spirituality over the years. In fact, I have a Sacred Heart in my coat of arms as sort of a memory of that. Because of that interest from a very young age, I actually went into the seminary right in high school.
As a young man and throughout his life, sports and athletics have played a large role in Bishop Paprocki's life. As an avid runner, he has completed 24 marathons.
I got into sports through my father, first of all, in terms of spectator sports. So my father was a big hockey fan, and he took me and my siblings to the old Chicago Stadium to watch the Blackhawks when we were young. And that's when I got into playing hockey. I played floor hockey at the local boys club. And we were just picking up sides, and they needed a goalie. And I was in 8th grade at the time. They said, anybody want to be a goalie? And I said, I'll give it a try. And I liked it. Then played floor hockey and roller hockey for a while. Eventually learned how to play ice hockey. And I've been playing that for years. I'm still playing hockey. The running actually came about very much for reasons of physical fitness. So 3 of my grandparents died before I was born from heart disease in their 50s. So I thought, well, if I want to live past 55, I probably should do something cardiovascular in terms of exercise, so I started running. But that has kept me in shape all of these years in order to have the energy to do the things that I do. I try to run first thing in the morning. I get up, I say some prayers, I pray while I'm running. You know, I kind of try to merge my spirituality with my running. I wrote a book about that. I have a book called Holy Goals for Body and Soul, 8 Steps to Connecting Sports with God and Faith. And it just describes that through the world of sports. And so there are days, for example, if I don't run, I don't feel I have as much energy. If you're not taking care of your body, that has a negative aspect in how you feel.
Thomas Paprocki was ordained to the priesthood on May 10, 1978. As a priest of the Archdiocese of Chicago, he engaged in a variety of roles and ministries.
I do remember the day of the ordination very vividly. I went running that morning, so a group of us went running. So this was 1978. The movie Rocky had come out just the year before that, 1977, I believe. We ran around the lake. It's about 3 miles around the lake at Mundelein. And then we finished in front of the steps of the main chapel. And we ran up the steps of the chapel while they were playing the Rocky theme song. So that kind of got us energized a little bit for that. I was assigned to St. Michael Parish in South Chicago. It was a very trilingual parish. Actually, at that point, my Spanish was better than my Polish. And we had more Spanish-speaking people than Poles. So we had a Spanish Mass every Sunday with about 1,000 people there. My ministry was very much with the different ethnic groups. So while I was in the seminary, actually, is when I started to have this interest in social justice and wanting to help the poor. I decided to do something a little bit unusual or unique, you might say. I decided as a priest to go to law school, was accepted at DePaul University College of Law in Chicago. I got the law degree. I helped co-found the Chicago Legal Clinic, which is still going to this day. My focus was primarily on immigration law because we had so many immigrants. My law school classmate who started the legal clinic with me is Jewish. So Ed Grossman, you have a Jewish lawyer and a Catholic priest, started a legal clinic. Our motivation, I'd say, would be Judeo-Christian in motivation, but it wasn't that necessarily someone had to say that they had the same religious values that I did. So speaking for myself, I would say yes, the reason for wanting to open a legal clinic is because I also see the face of Jesus, or try at least, as much as I can to see the face of Jesus in the people that are serving, especially in the faces of the poor.
Father Paprocki was eventually sent to Rome to study canon law at the Gregorian University. Upon his return to the United States, he was named Chancellor of the Archdiocese in 1992, and then, in 2003, Auxiliary Bishop of Chicago. On April 20th, 2010, Paprocki was appointed the Bishop of Springfield by Pope Benedict XVI.
During Holy Week, I was actually going to Rome. Cardinal George knew I was going to Rome. So I was leaving on Monday morning, and he was trying to get me on the phone, left a message. I called him back when I got to the airport, and he said, "Oh, good, I'm glad I got you before you got on the plane. Can you talk?" And I said, "Well, I'm in the terminal at O'Hare. What's going on?" He said, again, right to the point, he said, "You've been appointed Bishop of Springfield." And I said, "Well, I'm on my way to Rome. Can I say something to the Holy Father about this?" And he said to me, "Well, certainly you can, but you have to be careful because it's still under pontifical secret, and you don't want somebody to overhear you." So that's what I did. I went to the general audience because it was Holy Week. There were only 4 bishops there, and I was junior in seniority, so I'm the last one up there. I introduced myself, and I said, "I understand you have just appointed me to be Bishop of Springfield in Illinois, and I want to thank you for this appointment and assure you I'll do my best to try to be a good bishop." And he smiled and nodded, and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if he has any idea where Springfield, Illinois is. He was very gracious about it, and I have a wonderful photograph of that in my conference room, and I tell people this, I'm actually thanking Pope Benedict for the appointment to Springfield.
In the years since becoming bishop, Bishop Paprocki has worked to lead his people as an apostle and a shepherd.
In terms of the image that I use, I am more of a shepherd than a fisherman. When I go to a parish for confirmation, I always ask to meet with the confirmation candidates before Mass. And one of the things that I do with them is I go through the symbolism of the vestments that I'm using, the mitre, the crozier, I have a couple different croziers, but the one I most frequently use is a wooden crozier, hand-carved by a Polish wood carver. It was made for me and a gift to me by the parish where I was pastor in Chicago, the big Polish-American parish. And so it very much looks like a shepherd's crook. And some of them will say, well, is it a cane? And I'll say, no, it's not a cane. I can walk fine without this. What does it look like? And they'll say, oh, yeah, a shepherd's staff. And I'll say, exactly. Well, why do you think a bishop has a shepherd's staff? A shepherd has to have sheep. I said, well, who are my sheep? And, well, us, you know. So symbolically, the people are the sheep. So I really love that image of the bishop being the one taking the place of our Lord, who is the good shepherd, and then having the whole flock, and the bishop then being the sign of unity and the one who keeps everyone together. It's one of the great blessings of the Catholic Church to have a pope who is the symbol of unity for the whole universal church, and then in a diocese to have a bishop and a parish to have a pastor, that we have these unifying forces that keep us from just splintering into various groups. Well, the way that I try to take care of the flock as the shepherd is to be present as much as I can. You know, so now you have to still be prudent with your time and all that, but as much as possible, if someone is asking me to do something, I will, as much as possible, try to do that. In addition to that, I try to look proactively for ways that I can make myself present.